Inside the Birds is back. Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live presented by DraftKings. I'm Jeff Mosher, and I'm here with the usual suspects. My co-host Adam Kaplan, of course, former Eagles left tackle Trey Thomas, and the godfather of tape breakdown, Greg Cosell. As you can all see, we're doing the show remotely today for the final pregame show of the year, and we will start by wishing everyone a happy New Year. This will be a different kind of show. As the Eagles have nothing at stake tonight in the season finale against the Washington football team, whereas Washington can win the NFC East with a win. So instead of breaking this game down normally, comprehensively, the way we do, we're going to do more of an evaluation show. We're going to look ahead a little bit, react to some of the news of the last 24, 48 hours regarding the franchise. And of course, we will get into some of the game that's going to happen tonight, some of the players that we look forward to evaluating, both what they've done and what we think they can do. So it's going to be a great show. You guys ready? I know there's not a whole lot as far as X's and O's and wins and losses, but this is going to be a very interesting show. We've got a lot to cover. Everybody,
I'm ready.
We are good to go. We are good, as always.
All right. You know, I don't get to make fun of anybody's blazer today, so some of my material is not going to be at its best, but you guys will be accustomed to that, of course. For those watching at home, please take a second right now to share this show on Twitter or Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, you can please give us a like. That goes a long way. And of course, if you want to leave a question or a comment in the chat box, we will try to respond to it during the show. We've been doing that lately over the last 3 or 4 weeks and had some success there. So we encourage everybody to give feedback, ask a question. And again, I will try to spread it around if you want to ask for either Trey or Greg or Adam or myself. Just identify and we will do what we can do. All right, fellas. Well, there's been a lot of very pertinent news surrounding the Eagles for the last 24, 48 hours here. The biggest storyline this week was going to be the fate of the Eagles coaching staff. It still is a big storyline. Here's what we already know. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz will not be back in 2020. Head coach Doug Peterson is likely to be back, but he and the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, have a meeting early this week to discuss staff changes and some other things. So, Adam, as far as this meeting, we'll start with Doug Peterson. As far as this meeting that he's got early this week with Jeffrey Lurie, I'm told it's going to be very critical to the future of the Eagles as the team wants to find the right people who can come in and fix the quarterback situation. You've heard Doug also talk about fixing the quarterback situation. So what is your understanding of Peterson's fate right now in terms of this meeting with ownership?
Yeah, Jeff, you and I talked privately this week that we thought that Peterson would return. Everything we were hearing would suggest that. And even Peterson, the way he was talking, certainly thought he would be back. But I would caution one thing here, because we saw this last year. Though Peterson, the general manager, Howie Roseman, and Lurie will meet, they've got to come to an agreement on how they're going to attack this quarterback position, because what has happened the last 2 seasons, it's not worked. It was Peterson's decision to promote Press Taylor. We know that. Doug will want someone who he can work with. There's no question about that. They tried a format that clearly has not worked. It was the owner's thought process last season after the season ended that they needed to add more voices and be more innovative and all that. Yes, I think there was some progress late in the season, as there was last season. But overall, the last 2 seasons, it has not worked. The question then will be in this meeting, what will Doug Peterson's ideas been? Because you can't ask a coach to come with ideas in season. They got to coach the team. In this case, Peterson calls the play, so you really can't get into that. And that's what's really going to happen in this meeting. Exchange of ideas. We know last year at this meeting, Jeff, that the owner wanted 2 coaches removed. That happened. We'll see what happens at this meeting. But what we do know is this. There's no way you could have the same coaching structure under Peterson. It didn't work. I expect that to change. I do believe they're going to try to find someone with some presence. It's not easy to find those guys. There's no question. It's also got to be someone that Doug Peterson either comes up with himself or they come up together. But they need somebody who's coached quarterbacks, developed them. We'll come up with some names. In fact, we've heard some names we need to get confirmed the last couple of days, some interesting names. But where they're going to fit here or not remains to be seen. But you just cannot go forward with this structure. It's basically what you and I have talked about the last couple of months. We felt, talking to people we trust that have, especially people with other teams, when they watch the Eagles offense, it didn't work this season. And the other part about this is, and it's really the whole crux of these meetings, and you talked about it in passing there. Why is the quarterback regressed? Why is Carson Wentz regressed? Why can't Nate Sudfeld, who's being paid $2 million not to play this season, why did he regress over the last 2 seasons? They've got to find those answers, and it's not easy to find them, but they're going to have to start finding them this week.
Trey, are you surprised when you hear about this? There's going to be a meeting, there's going to be staff changes, but Doug's going to stay? Because I know some people have said, isn't that the same exact thing that happened last year? You kept your head coach and you made some staff changes and it didn't work?
Yeah, I am a little surprised, but I think that when you win that championship, man, that buys you a little time. Now, with the way things just played out this season, it just went downhill extremely quick. I know that, you can try to blame a little bit on COVID, bring them out of it on COVID or whatever the situation is. But those are just more excuses that add to the bag that's just been given. And, for the team to go the way they did, and then for Coach Schwartz to just say, you know what, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to get on out of here. That says a lot about what's going on with the team and the direction of the way things are going.
Adam, do you think that, before I get to Greg, I have a question on just overall philosophy, but Adam, with the structure of the staff, in order to make sure you're not just doing the same thing over and over, just firing guys, hiring guys, and expecting a different result, do you see a change in the structure? Do you think that they'll ask Doug to relinquish play calling, for example, or they'll bring in somebody with even more presence than, say, Press Taylor?
All right, so last year when they talked to Graham Harrell, the USC OC, he was interested in the job, but the way I understood it is like he wasn't going to leave the ability to call plays like he has at USC and then come to Philly or the NFL and not call plays.
Right.
The guys just don't do that. And obviously, it's an NFL job. You'd like to have one, but he's in a big-time program in college. Why would he leave one to not call plays? So that's something, Jeff. It's a great question. It's something they're going to have to come to grips with, unless there's somebody out there or a couple people out there who relish the opportunity to work with Carson Wentz. That they feel has got presence, that's got command, that could coach hard. One of the guys I really like is Dirk Cutter, the Atlanta Falcons OC. Maybe he wasn't a great head coach, but he's developed Matt Ryan. He's done a good job with him. He's done a good job with other quarterbacks in his career. He's no nonsense. He's got presence. I've used this example before and bears repeating. The Seahawks, talking to them a couple years ago about this, they felt they had to bring in someone who could coach up Russell Wilson hard. Who did they bring in? Brian Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer's one thing that he has going for him is he coaches really hard and he gets results. And you've seen how well Russell Wilson has played. He's been more disciplined. So that's what they have to do. And I expect them to look for someone like that.
Greg, I want to ask you just in general, when you've watched the Eagles offense this year, when you're breaking it down from conceptually and play design, because you watch almost every team in the league. So I can at least ask you kind of what stands out about the Eagles offense here? What stood out compared to what you see around the league that maybe leaves more to be desired?
Well, when Carson Wentz was playing, I thought the offense, and I know Adam has spoken about this as well in talking to coaches who studied the Eagles offensive tape, but I've studied it, and it was very static, very stagnant. It was not difficult to defend. We don't know the reason for that, but that's what the look was on tape from a tactical standpoint. Now, when they brought in Jalen Hurts, it was evident that they did some different things. Now, I don't know the reason for that. Maybe the coaching staff was rejuvenated as well. I don't know. But the bottom line point is this. Here you had a quarterback that they drafted number 2 in 2016, the player they wanted. They wanted Wentz over Goff. So Wentz was their guy. He was on a trajectory that looked as if he'd be a top 3 quarterback in the league. And in fact, as recently as 2 years ago, in conversations I had with general managers, they said that Wentz was a top 3 talent. And as Adam has talked about, people still believe that he's highly talented when he talks to other teams. So you have to ask yourself what happened. That has to be the foundation of what these meetings are, because you have to think of it this way. If Carson Wentz, who's a high-level talent, played the way he did this year within an offense that was very static and stagnant in its design and conception, what makes you think that Doug Peterson and whoever is coaching, and unless someone is brought in who basically has more control than Doug in working with Wentz and designing the offense, what makes you think that, number one, Doug is going to make Wentz a better player, or that he's going to make Jalen Hurts a good player? Because you have a quarterback in Wentz who's more talented than Hurts, And obviously he played at a high level, and then he regressed pretty significantly. So those are the questions that need to be discussed. And those are hard questions that require a hard conversation, not just, oh, we had a bad year, we'll be back next year, everything's great.
Well, I think you saying that, and Adam and I have talked about this, that to me makes this whole thing still a little bit fluid. I know that the report is that Doug is expected to return and they are going to have this meeting, but no one should be saying right now that this meeting is going to go really well and all the pillars are going to agree on everything. Certainly there could be a point in these meetings where both decide that they are not on the same page as to how to fix the quarterback. And then if that's the case, then they may have to go separate ways. We don't know. The meeting has to happen, but I just wanted to add that in, that I don't think anything right now is 100% ironclad. A lot of the future of the franchise sounds like it will depend on the results of this meeting and how well the ideas blend together.
And Jeff, you got another issue too, because we know we're in Philadelphia, and Trey can certainly speak to this as a player in Philadelphia. But you have the issue that if both Wentz and Hurts are back and they view Carson Wentz after these meetings as the starting quarterback, that he's going into camp as the #1 starter and he's your guy. We know how it is in Philly. Let's say week 1 is a home game and he throws 2 incompletions on his first 2 passes. We know how that works out. And, and Trey, you can certainly speak to this, but, that this is not an easy deal when you're in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. To me, this relationship is past fixing right now. I know that everybody wants to say, hey, we're going to do everything we can to try to fix Carson. But in my eyes, that relationship is done. Once you benched him to put Hurts in, that's it. For me, if I'm Carson, I want to go. I want out of here so I can go somewhere else, have a fresh start, because just like you were just saying, the first time he has a bad game, they're calling for the other guy. This relationship is past being repaired. Let me go.
Well, let me ask you, Trey, if you were Jeffrey Lurie, it's obviously not an easy predicament. It's either do what you're advocating and find a new coach, ship off the quarterback and hit the reset button, or see with your eyes that you've seen that you've had a quarterback who can play at a pretty high level. You've had a coach here who won a Super Bowl, and just try to continue to patch up the foundation and make things right. I mean, do you at least understand where Jeffrey's coming from of not wanting to hit the reset button here?
Well, he gave the okay for this. If he okay, all right, hey, letting Jalen Hurts get on the field, then you okayed this. You started this whole slide. I mean, I know that this was going to be a bad season anyway, but once you gave the okay to say, all right, put Jalen on in and bench Wentz, that's it. It's over.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting week. We'll see what happens in that meeting. One thing we do know, as I mentioned, is that the Eagles will definitely be looking for a new defensive coordinator. Jim Schwartz has been here for as long as Doug Peterson, since 2016. Now, 2 times he has had a top 10 defense in his 5 seasons, but the other 3, they've been kind of middle of the pack to low. So he's kind of had a up and down, uneven tenure as the defensive coordinator. You can also talk about the amount, the type of personnel that he's had on that side of the ball and the injuries. They've often been in there. Adam, what do you think about the next type of defensive coordinator that the Eagles will be looking for?
Yeah, Jeff, my understanding is that, and this is interesting, this is kind of like when Chip Kelly took over, though Kelly made a decision to go with the 34 defense, which was surprising. They're not married to running the 43 or their wide 9 front. I'm not saying they won't do it going forward, but as I understand it, it's all about the fit with the personnel. And if they could find a front that this would be Doug Peterson's decision. If he finds a front that he likes that works with the personnel, then they'll go that way. And that opens you up to hiring or considering other coaches. So that, to me, Jeff, I think when you look at it, that's the best way to do it, because you don't want to be locked into any particular front these days. But when you look at the offenses they have to face year after year, you certainly want to be more innovative and more dynamic.
All right, let's go. I mean, there are some in-house candidates that you would think would get at least a look because of experience, right? I mean, we talked about when they brought some of the new coaches in over the offseason, guys like Marcon Manuel has been a defensive coordinator. He was with Atlanta. Matt Burke was a defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. So they do have some guys with in-house experience.
They do. So if Burke gets it, and remember, he's a protege of Schwartz. That's why he's there. In fact, he had an opportunity, I'm told, to go with the Lions, and the Eagles were able to retain him. Instead of going with Corey Unlin, he chose to stay in Philly. If Burke is promoted to D coordinator, Jeremiah Washburn probably would be a consideration to be the D-line coach.
Mhm.
Washburn, remember, is not only a director of player personnel / senior defensive assistant. As I understand it, he's helping the D-line with evaluation, so forth, game planning. So that could happen if Burke got the job. And Marquand Manuel, look, he was a former player, longtime safety in the National Football League, was a one-year defensive coordinator like Burke. This time it was with the Falcons. Well-liked guy, good coach. So those would be the guys, as you said, as in-house candidates. I don't see anyone else right now in terms of in-house who they would look at.
Now, out of the house, we go with some of the names that you hear around the league that are pretty, the up and there are some who have been around the block, like a Dan Quinn. You're going to hear that name. Gus Bradley is probably a name you'll hear, right, as well, because of it, and they run similar schemes to Jim Schwartz. Do you think the Eagles will be looking for someone that brings in a wholly different, like almost like a Brandon Staley type, someone with newer, fresher concepts?
Jeff Brandon Staley was a guy from college football who's an up and comer who's been on the rise. Those guys are hard to identify. The
Right.
Sean McVays of the world, ironically, they're working with each other. No, Quinn and Bradley they're running the Seattle scheme. So you would have to make a decision, and then the length of your corners would be different. You're not that Avonte Maddox wouldn't fit in, but he's 5'9". You're going to want longer, taller corners. Raheem Morris, so I think would be a great hire if he doesn't get he just interviewed for the Falcons head coaching job. He's the interim head coach. What I like about him is he's young enough to relate to today's players. He's been a former head coach. He's been through a lot in his career. Jeff Ulbrich. Let me talk about Jeff Ulbrich. Talked to a couple of people who work with him. Remember, He's a long-time middle linebacker in the National Football League. Smart guy. He's run the defense for Raheem when Raheem Morris got promoted as the interim head coach. He's running their defense in Atlanta. Aaron Glenn is another guy, long-time defensive backs coach. Here's another thing I discovered about him. I didn't know this until I looked into it. He actually worked in scouting for 2 years, pro and also college.
Yep.
And then an old friend, D'Amico Ryans, who's been the inside linebackers coach for a while. Real super smart guy. The Mufasa, as Chip Kelly called him. We love him here in Philly. It's probably a little bit early to do this with him, but he's a guy to keep an eye on.
Greg, you did you have something to add to that?
Well, I know Aaron Glenn. It's funny, when he got into the business, he actually called me up to talk about it, watching tape and kind of things you look for. So Aaron, I've known Aaron Glenn for a long time. He's, I can't speak to whether he's ready to be D coordinator or not, because I'm not around him.
Right.
But I know that he's a really hardworking, smart guy. What that means, there's a lot of hardworking, smart guys, but I like him personally.
Sure. Now, you know how it is in Philly, as you guys are mentioning. I can only imagine if you even hear that D'Amico Ryans gets interviewed for the job, that's going to make a lot of noise in this city. Trey, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it matters if a guy played the position recently in the NFL or if it's just a good coach? I mean, do you think that works differently with the players?
I think playing helps a lot, especially when it comes to coaching, because, and sometimes it doesn't matter as long as you have that experience. But I think for players, you like to know that the guy that's calling the shots understands what you've been through and what's going on out there on the field. So it would help, but I think that when you say, all right, he was a protege of Schwartz, do you really want to have that same type of defense again that doesn't bring a lot of pressure, that you can tell if they do decide to blitz where it's coming from a mile away? I think that you need kind of just a change, a breath of fresh air, and bring something different to the table instead of a whole nother, Schwartz system.
Greg, if there's one thing I would ask you to identify about a Jim Schwartz defense, objectively, what would it be?
Well, it's funny.
Front four rush.
Schwartz evolved over the years, because when he was in Tennessee, they were much more aggressive with pressure. Now, that might have been a function of the players. That might have been a function of who else was on his staff, because sometimes you get ideas from others, and he was a younger coach. I would say in Philly, and we've discussed this, the overall foundation was a four-man pass rush with single high safety coverage behind it. That was predominant, man and zone go with that, cover one and cover three, but it was single high safety. And every once in a while, blitz, and some cover zero blitz thrown in based on down and distance, field location, things of that nature. But for the most part, it was predicated on a four-man pressure concept. And obviously you need four down linemen. You need to be able to rush the quarterback with four for that to be effective.
When you watch the Rams under Staley or even Robert Saleh with the 49ers, is there something that jumps out about them that makes them very successful?
Yeah, I can speak to what's going on a little bit more in the league right now, and
Sure.
something Brandon Staley believes in. Don't forget, Brandon Staley worked for Vic Fangio.
Right.
And their basic approach is much more of a split safety quarters look. Okay, and that's become far more prevalent in the league. Even Robert Saleh, who when he came with Kyle Shanahan to the 49ers, and his background is very Seattle based and cover 3 based, over the last couple of years, they've incorporated much more split safety coverage, because there's just a belief now in the league that split safety coverage, particularly quarters. I'm not talking about cover 2 where the safeties are deep. I'm talking about quarters where the safeties have run and pass responsibilities. They're part of the run game in quarters coverage. That has become much, much more prevalent in the league. And Brandon Staley, obviously, they've had a lot of success. Vic Fangio, who's considered as good as there is in the league, as Adam knows, as a coordinator. Some view him almost as a savant. He's very much a split safety guy. So there's a lot more of a belief in that approach throughout the league now than in, the old Seattle approach, Legion of Boom cover 3.
Right. Okay. So Sean McVay and Brandon Staley are both considered savants. Must be a pretty good coaching staff over there in LA.
Well, it helps when you have Aaron Donald down there in the middle. I mean, that helps your defense a lot.
Hey, there's a savant that picked that, man, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I want to bring up one more name, Adam, because we've talked about him a little bit. There's some buzz that I've heard on Marvin Lewis, but I know you've dug into that. The former Bengals head coach.
Yeah, I'm told that he wants to be a head coach again. He's not looking to be a defense coordinator at the NFL level. Lewis now is 63. Jeff, as you know, he's with Herm Edwards. He's a co-defense coordinator at Arizona State. But as I talked to someone who knows him very well, he really wants to be head coach again. He's not looking to be a D coordinator at this point of his life and career at the NFL level, because him and Herm and all the guys they have an interesting staff at Arizona State, a bunch of former NFL players. They've done a good job of turning around that program.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's interesting. You mentioned D'Amico Ryans, one other guy, and he may not be ready either, but I believe he's on that Arizona State staff, and that's Antonio Pierce.
Yep.
Antonio Pierce is going to be a D coordinator in this league and maybe a head coach in the future. He's seen that way by a lot of people that I've talked to.
I'm sure the Eagles would love to have a former Giants linebacker as their defensive coordinator. Eagles fans would love that.
He's a really sharp guy.
I worked with him at ESPN for a couple of years. He looks at the game. One of the things I love about talking to former players is when guys retire, they get to see the game a little differently. He sees it differently than a lot of other people. I very aggressive, as you remember, as a linebacker, number 58, terrific football player. As you said, Greg, a smart guy. Love getting to know him. And what a cool story it is at Arizona State with all these former guys and former players work with Herm out there.
Yeah, I remember he was no match for Brian Westbrook in the passing game, though.
Not many were. Not many were.
Not many, yeah.
Yeah, that is very fair. Not many were. All right, before we kind of move on from this, I think the one thing that really sticks out to me, guys, is that the Eagles are in a crossroads here. I mean, they're really trying to hold this thing together. It's clear that they're making these moves, right, as we've talked about, not only to fix the quarterback, repair him, but to remain competitive. They're not trying to hit the restart button. They want to win. They probably feel like they can win next year if the quarterback plays even 50% better. And sometimes when you're in that mode, you're making the type of moves to stay afloat and you don't always see the bigger picture. I'm not saying that's definitely the issue here, but what I am saying is I feel like the Eagles are in a crossroads where that if they don't make the right decisions this offseason, we could see another bad season next year. And it could be, with the cap situation, really hard to work out of. So this is going to be a very pivotal week, Trey, for this franchise. I mean, they don't have any, in my opinion, they can't afford to slip up here in their decision-making.
No, they have to hit home runs right here, because, I mean, you really, even with the cap situation, you're going to have to lose some guys. I mean, a couple guys that in that locker room are going to go. Also, you probably need to change up anyway. If you're going to bring Doug back, you're going to have to get rid of some of those guys anyway, because there might be some guys in that locker room that were perceived leaders that really weren't. So, just for you to turn this thing around, you're going to have to clean out some of these guys because the precedent has been set with the way practices was going, the way games were allowed to play, the way you allow things to slide throughout the week, and it showed itself on Sunday. That's how you find yourself at 4-10-1.
Yeah, no, and on top of that, not only do you have to fix the quarterback, get rid of the leaders who are not really leaders, repair the quarterback, but as you mentioned, and I think this is big, now, even if you are able to repair the quarterback, he's got to have the mental wherewithal to shake off a couple of interceptions one day, a loss, and then the entire city calling for his backup, because that's how it's going to be in Philly going forward. So
well, are we assuming that Carson Wentz, and by the way, I agree with exactly what Trey said. I don't believe that Carson Wentz will be here next year, no matter what they say, because I think that he and his agents will force that, but that's another question. But are we discussing this as if Carson Wentz is the quarterback next year and it's a given?
Let me introduce this. Why would you keep the head coach and then go through the real, search of trying to find the quarterback repair people, only to turn around and trade the quarterback that you felt like you needed to repair? Wouldn't you just start over?
Then why did you bench him?
Well, he was struggling.
He was struggling. I mean,
so is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's playing right now as bad a football as he's played in his career.
But they're still winning. But they're still winning.
Geno Smith this week?
No, but
I
they're
think
still winning.
The point on this one, Greg, is that they felt that the current staff was not doing a good job to repair them, but they feel like there are people out there who can come in, work with Doug Peterson, and rebuild Carson Wentz. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not. But I would think if you were going to go on a Jalen Hurts and you've already made that decision, you might clean your house and just bring in more of a college-y like coaching staff, or just make new guy, new quarterback, new coach.
Okay, let me just chime in here a little bit. First of all, they have to hear what Doug Peterson's thoughts are on this subject. And we talked about this earlier, why this season was a failure, what the plans are to improve the quarterback significantly. Obviously, how do you rebuild Carson Wentz? If Doug says, I don't want him on our football team, then that changes everything. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's another thing. People are acting like, that's fair. Okay, Doug's back and they'll figure out the rest. It's not that easy. This is a complicated situation. They've never been through anything like this. This was not discussed last year, but as sure as heck is going to be discussed now.
Right.
So things are going to have to change here. This is not an easy, okay, 1, 2, 3, that's it. And that's not the case here. I can tell you that as a fact.
I think also when you say, okay, you want to bring in some guys to repair, you don't want Jalen. And once you make this decision to eat this $54 million that you're about to have to just go ahead and swallow, now you're saying, all right, you know what? I don't want Jalen to have the same regression. So we need to bring in a staff that makes sure that we keep our guys tight and that we don't keep seeing these ebbs and flows throughout the quarterback.
Yeah.
I wonder, you also wonder, again, this is a big part of the meeting, there are going to be guys, if you want to bring in an offensive coordinator with presence and a quarterback coach with presence, Doug pretty much said this past week, he wants the voice in the room to be his and for his foremost. That already seems to set up at least the idea of some headbutting there. Doug says, this is my offense, my team, and ownership and management's about to say, well, that's fine. We want you to bring in, a really established name here as an OC and quarterback coach. And they may even recommend that guy has to call plays. So I can see this kind of coming to a head pretty quickly if everybody's not on the same page on this.
That's why Adam's point is 100% correct. We don't know what Doug Peterson is going to say. We don't know what Jeffrey Lurie's going to say. I mean, if Jeffrey Lurie insists that, hey, we have to bring someone in, you're not going to be the guy that closely works with Carson Wentz if you think he's the guy, and you're not going to be the play caller. Who knows? Doug might say, well, I'll see you later then. You don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. Well, that's why they say in this business, stay tuned, because everything can change in 24 to 48 hours. Well, let's move on a little bit. We will talk about the game a little bit, but I really want to focus on certain players playing today and certain seasons and what we are going to see from what we have seen and what we might see in the future. We'll start as we usually do with the injury report, because there are people have asked if the Eagles should just be better off tanking this game, and you start to see the injury report for the Eagles, and you wonder if Doug probably doesn't have much of a choice about tanking or not, because the Eagles are very underhanded. Adam, they're going to be without the running back, Miles Sanders. He's not going to play in this game, so it looks like we'll be seeing a steady diet of Corey Clement and Boston Scott, and maybe even Jason Huntley.
Yeah, in fact, they didn't. Yesterday was the deadline to add players off the practice squad. Yes, Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. They did not add Elijah Holyfield. That surprised me, Jeff. It's like, why is this guy on the practice squad? This is the perfect opportunity to get a power back, evaluate him, let him get some carries in this game.
Right.
And they've chosen to evaluate Huntley, who they claimed off waivers from the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's those three guys. A little bit surprised that they did it. I know it's a minor situation, but why not? This is a perfect evaluation game. This is what coaches look forward to sometimes. Listen, they don't want to be losing. They don't want to be in this position, but you know what? Might as well embrace and say, you know what? Let's evaluate these players for next season. And they chose not to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Corey Clement stands out to me. I have a hard time thinking he's going to be back on the team next year.
Of course.
I mean, he was almost lucky to be on the team this year.
Yeah.
So I can understand wanting to get a look at Jason Huntley, but Corey surprises me that he's up, but we'll see. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson. He has probably played, Trey, his final down as an Eagle. And if it was an 81-yard touchdown. And then he got sore after doing a head flip into the end zone.
There you go. He went out with a bang, you know. And, that was it. Big splash play, you know, you flip into the end zone. That's it. You're done as an Eagle.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much a microcosm of 2020 right there.
There you go.
Dallas Goedert and Richard Rodgers are both going to be out today. So that means at tight end today, the Eagles are looking at Zach Ertz, and then they brought up from the practice squad Jason Kroom, or was he on the 53, Adam?
He's brought up. Yeah, Kroom was this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they got a lot. I mean, the tight end position, they brought up, as you said, Jason Kroom was brought up. It's interesting. They didn't bring up Butler, but they protected him, which means they probably want to bring him back to a future contract for next year.
Right.
And then Caleb Wilson is also added to the roster. So
there you go.
They'll have those three guys. But Ertz's role in this game will be pivotal, obviously, because they're down to Deshaun Jackson in this game. And Deshaun does have a year left on his contract, but he's made a lot of money, Jeff. Just under $20 million over the last 2 seasons is remarkable to me.
That's a little bit more than I've made, Adam. Just a little bit more than I've made.
And me and Trey and Greg, yes.
Exactly. Well, it's also pivotal from a Zach Ertz standpoint, because this could be the final game of his career. Obviously all indications are that they could be moving on this offseason with the contract and everything like that. Greg, he's only come back and he hasn't been the Zach Ertz since he's come back that we're accustomed to, 7, 8, 9, 10 catches. But have you seen over the last few weeks a little bit more getting open or anything different from Zach Ertz?
No, I don't think he's a different player than he was before. I think the big question with Zach Ertz is they're not going to pay him. They're not going to give him a new contract. And Adam's talked about that. That's not going to happen right now. He's a year older. He just came through a year with injuries. So they're not going to give him a new contract. So Adam knows the cap situations far better than I do. I don't really study that. So I don't know what his present salary means right now in the context of their overall cap situation, which obviously is not very good. And some hard decisions will have to be made. But there's no way that he'll get a new contract. Can you bring him back, as a viable player in your offense? You can. And he is what he is. He's probably past the point of being a 90, 100 catch player. But can he be a viable part of your offense? Sure. But as we've discussed many times, Dallas Goedert, I think, and he's faced his own set of injuries, but he's a different kind of player, and he fits more of what the tight ends in this league, the really good tight ends, have become. But the problem with him is availability. He's missed a lot of games.
Yeah. Although you could also, you could say that with Dallas Goedert too. So whoever you,
that's what I mean. Dallas Goedert's missed a lot of games as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what did they expect to get out of Ertz in this game again?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? So you're not giving him a new contract, and you're saying that, all right, this might be my last game as an Eagle, and I know that I have to go on to another team. I definitely don't want to get hurt going into the offseason. So what exactly are we expecting from Ertz in this game?
Are you suggesting, Trey, that Zach might not be real motivated to go out there and play?
No, he will not. He will not be very motivated to go out here and play in this game.
Well, I tell you, I think the second half of this game has a chance to be very interesting, because if it's starting to get out of hand, and I tend to think Washington's going to dominate this game, I think you're going to see the team kind of recognize that, the Eagles, and I've even heard, don't be surprised if Nate Sudfeld makes an appearance in this game, because look, I mean, for what you're saying here, Trey, and for other things that are at stake like a draft pick. It's really not beneficial for the Eagles to win this game. And not only that, it's so beneficial for Washington. You know, they're going to go out there going 100 miles per hour. We already talked about some of the injuries at the skill position players, but really it's the offensive line that concerns you, Trey. I mean, there's going to be no Jordan Mailata. So Matt Pryor is probably going to play left tackle. Brett Toth is probably going to make his first NFL start at right tackle. Either that or they're going to flip and the other one plays the other tackle. That's not a great situation for Jalen Hurts.
No, not at all, especially when you go back and you look at all the pictures that come from practice this week. They only practiced in what, jerseys? No one had on helmets. And I don't know what day that practice, I think it was on Wednesday or something like that, where they were out there and just everybody had on Scullies, you know, and just you went through the practice. And I don't think people really understand when you make a switch like that, when you're saying, all right, I need you to switch sides. The muscle memory that needs to go into that switch, man, is huge. And to me, I would say, man, well, let's just run this ball because you're going to mess around and put Jalen in a situation where you got Chase Young and company. They're playing for something, you know, and we're just out there just trying to get through this season. And, man, you could really come out of this game with the way you switched up this offensive line. It could have your quarterback get his head taken off. So you might want to just, you know, make sure you play it safe and just get through this.
Yeah. Your Manscaped Man of the Week, which I'm not going to give away now, I think was dead on. We'll get to that later.
Yes.
It's a person who plays a very, very pivotal role in this game without actually even playing in it.
Oh,
so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Real quick to finish out the injuries for the Eagles. Those were just the offensive injuries. On defense, they will be without Fletcher Cox because of the neck. They'll be without Derek Barnett because of the calf. They'll be without Sean Bradley, the rookie linebacker, Duke Riley, their nickel linebacker. And also, I guess Michael Jaquette is questionable, but I know that a lot of fans would say he was fairly questionable just being out there in the first place. And that should finish it up for the Eagles as far as their defensive injuries. Now, Washington's kind of sort of getting healthier at just the right time. It sounds like Alex Smith is going to give it a go. He's been dealing with that right calf strain. And he is, I believe he's expected to play today.
Unless something happens in pregame. Because remember, last Saturday, his calf stiffened up. And Antonio Gibson, I was told after Friday's practice, they're pretty certain that he'd play. That is despite not practicing this week. And now Terry McLaurin, this is his second high ankle sprain. He has not practiced the last 2 weeks. So he's missed 6 practices in a row. Even if he plays, who knows how long he'll last. That obviously will help the Eagles. And Alex Smith back there, as I understand it, he did test the calf injury. He rolled out harder just to see how he would react. Mm-hmm. But with calf strains, man, they can have setbacks at any time. It's not, the conditions aren't going to be great with the rain. So this game could be kind of interesting because you're going to have a bunch of backups for the Eagles. You've got some really key players for Washington that are going to play if they play with injuries that could have setbacks. And turf toe, by the way, Trey's talked about it. I don't know how Antonio Gibson's going to get through this. I know he played the previous game with a turf toe. Not easy to play with that injury.
Yeah. On a personal note, I think you guys might agree if you just separate, any allegiance, not that we have allegiances, but I'm kind of happy to see Alex Smith make it back for this game. I hope he does because I think he's been in just a truly remarkable story of perseverance and a comeback from how many surgeries was it? Like something
17.
like 17 surgeries.
Wow. That's a lot of surgeries.
That is a lot of surgeries, right? And he wasn't a young spring chicken either at the time of those surgeries. So to see him come back today and have a chance to win the division for Washington, a team that nobody picked to win the division going into the year, I think would be pretty special for them and for Ron Rivera too, who's obviously overcome a lot with his cancer treatment. So, good for them, and we'll see what becomes of them. I don't know if I consider them a dangerous team. I consider them a dangerous defense, though. I'm not sure if they're the type of team that can. I don't know, Greg, how you feel about it, but I don't know if they can upset a top seed. But their defense can give any quarterback a problem.
Without question, they're a defense-based team. Offensively, we're not sure what they are, even with Alex Smith, who's always been an efficient quarterback. And by the way, his winning percentage as a starter is pretty remarkable for a guy who's not really a high-level talent. But he's won about I think I looked it up and I'm trying to remember what it was. It's a pretty high number.
Right.
But he's won a high percentage of his starts throughout his career. He's just an efficient player, usually does not turn the ball over. And when you have a really good defense, that's obviously very helpful. But they're a defense-based team. Washington arguably has the best front four in the game.
Yeah, I mean, that whole Brett Toth matchup against the Montez Sweats and Chase Young is pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
The Eagles.
It could get ugly quick.
Dangerous. Yeah, that could get ugly.
And look, if you look at all those, Jeff, if you look at all the former first-round picks, Kerrigan, and then you got Payne.
There are 5 of them, Adam. 5 of them.
5, right. It's unbelievable what they can do when they've got it going on. There's no one like that. And by the way, here's the other thing. For years to come, Kerrigan's probably not going to be around much longer, but these guys will grow together.
Yep.
You got to have an offensive line. And this is one of the things the Eagles have to look at is what are they going to do to get younger that line? Because you got to go against them twice a year. It will not be easy.
No, it will not be. We're going to talk about that a little later in the show. I neglected to mention with the injuries, there's one player out who's not injured, but he is on the reserve COVID-19 list. That's safety Jalen Mills. So that, of course, will put the microscope today on guys like the rookie Kayvon Wallace, on Marcus Epps, and Rudy Ford to fill that gap. And it also means, and we've seen this already impact them, if they have any injuries at corner, they don't have Jalen Mills to kind of move over. So once again, the Eagles are in a very thin position out there at the cornerback position. They did elevate from the practice squad, as we mentioned, Prince Tega-Wanogo, the offensive tackle, Joe Osman, the pass rusher, and Blake Countess, the safety. So they've got some reinforcements there. Oh, and by the way, Trey, I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Earlier in the week, Brandon Brooks gets activated into the 21-day window. I tend to think that was just to be able to get him on the practice field. It'll get him a little practice lathered up. And I think I've heard you say this before. You really hope he does not play today, correct?
Yeah, no, don't play. No, I talked to him about this about a week or so ago. Dave, what are you doing? You know, he was like, man, I just want to go get activated. Like, if it's just to go out there and stand and watch practice, cool. But what are you coming back for? You know,
I don't know.
And that would almost be like, you know, that would almost be a fireable offense if you put Brandon Brooks out there on the field for this game. I mean, you know, you throw him out there and something else happens again, the entire staff needs to go.
Yeah, I hope he's not in Doug's ear trying to say, hey, get me in there, get me in there.
He actually can't because the deadline to activate him was Saturday. Him and
That's right,
Davion
they didn't
Taylor,
activate
that
him.
was the deadline. Now, by the way, Jeff, we noted in March that his 2021 salary became fully guaranteed a year early. So he's on the roster no matter what. I mean, they're not going to cut him, and no one's going to trade for him because he's coming off another injury.
Right.
But they owe him $10.4 million in 2021, which is fully guaranteed. So Lane Johnson, we know this, they're definitely on the roster.
Yeah.
If the offensive line, it's completely up in the air. Well, actually, no, same all 3 guys. I'm sorry.
Right.
And Isaac is the younger guy, but you got 2 guys over 30, Jeff, that are definitely be starting in 2021.
Have you guys seen Brandon Brooks's physique? I'm sure you have, Trey, right?
I mean, it's not like that. I mean, you know, why you got to
Because
ask me
you
like
follow
that?
him on. No.
I mean, you know, you asked me in a weird way. I mean, it just, you know,
I just know how active.
like we go and do lunch from time to time. Everybody's fully clothed. Like we don't. It's not like that.
Let me rephrase that for you. I know how active you are on Twitter, Trey, and that's where Brandon Instagram has put a lot of the pictures of his physique. I wanted that alignment's perspective. I mean, he has completely reshaped his body. He almost looks like a well-chiseled tight end now. Is that good? I assume it's going to be all right, but
yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, you know, anytime you can have abs, how is that a bad thing?
I don't know. I'm just used to linemen looking a certain way, and that way ain't it. So,
but Jeff, just one thing before we move on. It's still imperative. We just outlined 3 guys who are definitely going to be back on the offensive line.
Yeah,
and we'll get into Mailata versus Dillard and all that. They still need to reshape and get younger. They need the future replacements for Johnson and Brooks sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, they may have one in Jack Driscoll. We'll have to see what their offseason plans for him. We know that they like him. All right, let's kind of move on. Oh, real quick, Adam, I did not give you your Tropical Storm Kaplan nod.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to have rain.
Yeah,
we're
raining.
Yeah, we're going to have rain all game, 50 to 60% chance of rain. Wind won't be a factor under 10 miles an hour. It's going to be around 40. So it's going to be soggy. It's going to be wet at the link. And I don't see it. We'll get into before we get out of here next hour what the score might be, but there are going to be some turnovers because of the wet ball. It's going to be an interesting game tonight because I don't think we may not get quite what we think for both offenses, but I'll tell you this, there's going to be some turnovers in this game.
Well, that would be a first for the Eagles if they're able to produce a few. I know they've done better at that lately.
So Adam, you're not thinking 40-35 game.
Huh? See, I'm Mr. Low Score. See, it's funny. Jeff knows this. I'm Mr. Low Score between he and I usually.
Yeah.
It's picking the right side to win is my problem.
I think these two teams could play 10 quarters and you weren't going to get a 40-35.
Yeah,
game.
exactly right.
All right. Let's talk about the game a little bit here as we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of it. The most difficult question facing the Eagles, and we talked about it, is whether winning is actually a good thing or whether they should just see as many young players play as possible. I mentioned all the injuries that are already putting Doug in the position where he has to play young players. But Adam, I want to bring this up to you, actually everybody, but I'll start with you because I've heard the fans say, just tank the game, just tank the game. And I don't think that people understand that it's really hard to tank in football and that there's a perception of that around the league, just on how difficult that is. What have you heard from when you talk to people around the league about the concept of football tanking?
Yeah, and it's funny. All the people last year said the Dolphins were tanking were incorrect. I remember checking into it. What happened was Brian Flores and their general manager, what they wanted to do last year was figure out who belonged on the team and who didn't. So they weeded out a lot of guys that didn't fit by scheme or guys they just didn't want on the football team. And Chris Greer is the GM. And you saw this year, and their plan was to spend, and boy, did they spend this year in free agency. And look, they're on the verge of having one of the better improvements over the last season. So they weren't tanking, no matter what people thought. Now, the team that clearly was trying to tank were the Cleveland Browns under Sashi Brown. They were trying to do something a little different with Paul DePodesta. It didn't work because Brown is not really a football person. But what they did was, and you remember when they brought in Brock Osweiler, they basically paid the Texans to take. They just wanted the draft pick, but it didn't work because they didn't have the right people in place. But overall, Jeff, to answer your question, teams don't believe in tanking, and obviously we'll hear what Trey has to say. But I've never heard. This is 21 years now of covering the National Football League. I've never heard a team. This isn't the NBA. I've never heard of a team saying, you know what, we're going to purposely lose, not try to win, other than the Browns, who clearly were trying to do it.
Yeah, and then that was organizationally. But Trey, like if you think about it, you got normally 5 offensive linemen who start and then 2 or 3 backups, right, on your game day. So if you were to quote unquote tank, really, you couldn't even do that with your offensive line because you only have a couple of backups. So eventually 2 starters are going to have to play. You're going to have wide receivers who have to play. I mean, it's to put the full on tank not only is almost impossible, but it's also very dangerous, I would think, for certain players who are out there, for any player out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once you start going half speed and you're trying to lose, that's when you start getting hurt. And I think that's why it's kind of hard for football teams to tank because, you want your guys to go out there and fly around, play full speed, and, you don't want them to get hurt. And it always just takes just one spark. It can accidentally cause a spark happens, and then next thing you know, the team is playing out of their mind. So you never know how it's going to go. Even with this whole thing with Schwartz saying that he's done, this might inspire this defense to come out there and play out of their minds tonight. Who knows?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's all sorts of variables you have to account for. Let's talk about the quarterback today. Jalen Hurts is going to get his 4th start. He is 1-2 so far in his starts. He has consecutive losses after the upset of New Orleans. Obviously, he's going to have his eyes out for that Washington pass rush that we've spoken about. Their edge rush, their interior burst is good as well. Greg, I wanted to ask you, because you had high praise for Hurts after his first 2 starts. When you went back and watched the last game, what did you see? And now what is your kind of overall diagnosis of Hurts after 3?
Well, to be honest with you, I thought the way he played last week was the way I would have expected him to play in his first couple of games. It was a game in which he did not see things clearly. He left the pocket too early. He left a lot of throws on the field. I thought it was a learning experience game for him. The way I saw it, and this is the way I would describe it, and I've used this phrasing before because I've studied quarterbacks for a long time. He was too slow to eliminate what was not there and isolate what was there. So when you're too slow doing that, that's a mental issue. And the result of being too slow in that area means that you play too fast physically, because when you don't see it and don't get a clear picture, you tend to move, particularly when you've got good legs. So he ended up playing very fast in this game, left a lot of throws on the field, and also missed some throws with poor ball placement, which is something that was a concern coming out of Oklahoma. So
Sure.
this was a game that I think was more what I expected when he was named the starter. These issues did not show up much at all in his first two games, but they showed up in the third game. So, you can talk about tanking all you want, but in Jalen Hurts, he's going to go out and play. I mean, he's got to, in his mind, I'm sure every snap he takes, he has something to prove. He wants to be the starting quarterback in Philadelphia. So Jalen Hurts is not out there. He's not worrying about the Eagles draft position.
Did you guys notice if Dallas did anything to particularly confuse him or slow down that thought process, spying, anything like that really stood out? Or?
The one thing Dallas did do, and it was clearly a tactic, they did it on third down, and let's say more than 5 or 6, is they played with dime personnel, 6 defensive backs. They played cover 2 predominantly, and they used the 6th defensive back, Goodwin, as a spy. So that was Dallas's game plan approach, which was different from what other teams had done. But cover 2 is not a unique coverage where you go, oh my God, they did something that we've never seen before. They simply played dime, spied with Goodwin, and played cover 2. That was their approach.
Trey, what happens if tonight, he has another rough game, which, I mean, I think we would expect a little bit. He's got a very good defense he's going up against. He's probably going to be running for his life a lot, but then you still, at the end of the day, have 4 games to judge the guy on. And I'm not sure if it's a fair account to judge him on, as far as if you wanted to move forward and say, Jalen Hurts is my quarterback.
I mean, if he has another rough game, he just has a rough game. This is all part of the progression as expected when you have a young quarterback that's stepping into the game. This is going to be his learning curve. But I think that when you have a defensive front the way they have out there and the way you're switching guys around, I'm not sure if Matt Pryor is going to be playing right or even has he even played left tackle before? Because when he came in before, he played right tackle. I'm not sure what game that was. Was that the Ravens? I believe he stepped in. And he had to come in and play a little bit at the right side. So I think he stepped in and played right tackle. But
yeah, it was Ravens game, right?
Yeah. So now you're saying, okay, you know what? Who's going to play which side? You don't know what's going on there. So, and you already have all of these snap issues that's going on. So I'm just hoping that the kid makes out of the game safely.
Well, I think I'm sure he's
I don't think I could have said it better myself. That was about as good as it gets by Trey. I would worry about. Boy, Jalen Hurts is going to be real sore on money. Not that quarterbacks aren't sore on money, but Jeff, Eagles are starting 3 backup linemen, particularly both tackles. Oh, Prince Tega Wanago, who will be the swing tackle. He if I'm not mistaken, he has not appeared in the game, right?
No,
he has not appeared.
So this thing today, you got to go 12 personnel. You gotta line these. I know that Goddard's not there, which is certainly going to be a problem. Where they have to go with the 6 offensive linemen, they're going to have to help.
You might go 6 offensive linemen and 3 tight ends.
Right, exactly. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, but that's kind of the issue, though. If you go 6 offensive linemen, you're putting a guy who's never played before on the field in Prince Tega Wanogo. If you're going 12 or 13 personnel without Richard Rodgers and without Dallas Goedert, you're putting Jason Kroom and Caleb Wilson on the field. Now, I remember
not known as blockers, by the way.
I remember Caleb Wilson tried to block somebody a couple of weeks ago on the first play of the game, and that was an absolute disaster. So I'm not sure that there's Doug's looking at the playbook like, oh man, what's my best blocking thing? And everybody just come off the field.
You have to anticipate on the personnel that you have.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we have to go against this incredible 4-man front.
Right.
It's bad. You have bad matchups.
So the Eagles know this. This. So I'm not saying they're going to put up 30, but they know this going into the game. So there'll be tactics. You'll see a lot of plays that, again, I don't want to call them gimmick plays, but you're going to see a lot of misdirection concepts. You'll see a lot of things that try to just slow down the rush and second level players just to cause a moment of hesitation.
Sure. I want to just go back real quick on Carson Wentz again, because I didn't ask this before, and it's something I wanted to pitch to you guys really quick, because we'll have to see what happens in this meeting, but I sense that they're going to want to try to rebuild him.
No doubt.
Where would you start with Carson as far as you're a new Trey, I want to ask you, because you have a lot of thoughts on just offense in general, and you've wanted to be a coach, of course, for the offensive line. But if you were coaching Carson and you sit down with him, what's the first thing that you're talking about with Carson this offseason?
I'm gonna get you better protection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna work
So
on this.
it's not even about Carson.
No, like I need to get you better protection so that you can feel comfortable in the pocket. Getting sacked 50 times is one of the highest in this franchise history. And I mean, when you got Randall Cunningham that was sacked, 70? No, that's ridiculous. Everybody on that offensive line should have been fired when they gave up 104 sacks back in 1986.
How does that happen?
I do not know. Randall Cunningham was sacked, I believe, 70 times. Now, when you look at just the most sacked quarterbacks in franchise history, you got Randall Cunningham is the top 3 with 70 and 56 and 60, whatever the number is. And then you got Carson Wentz right up there with 50. So, I mean, that's a lot of sacks to take in this season, right out the gate. And I'm not even talking about all the quarterback hits he had taken before he was pulled out. You're looking at probably over 130 quarterback hits leading up to the time that they pull him out of the game. So to me, the first thing is saying, hey, man, look, I got to get you better protection so that you can feel comfortable in the pocket and you can be the player that you are, because that's what's hurting him when he always feels like the pocket is going to collapse.
Right. And knowing you the way I do, you're not just talking about better players, you're talking about better protection schemes as well, right?
Absolutely. Possibly even some of the technique, possibly even coaching, because there are a lot of issues. And I know a lot of people would say, well, hey, all of the injuries, it wasn't always injuries. There was a lot of missed points, a lot of misdirection in the blocking scheme, and then also some snap issues. I mean, there were a lot of problems out there that wasn't just injury related.
Greg, what's the one thing you would start with Carson Wentz?
Well, I think you got to start over as if he's literally a high school quarterback. I think you have to start with mechanics, technique. That starts with taking the snap. That starts with his drop. That starts with his ball carriage. Ball carriage is where he holds the ball on his drop. You have to do that from under center. You have to do that in the shotgun. You have to get him you have to change the way he strides a little bit. We've talked about this, he tends to overstride. And because he does not have a naturally compact delivery, when he overstrides, he has to rush his arm to catch up. And because you can't quite do that, what happens is he falls back on a lot of throws. He doesn't transfer his weight properly. And these are all things that he did well in 2016 and 2017, because they're all fixable. They're all things that can be worked on, but they need to be worked on every day. Okay, and that includes an off season. Off season is really where you do all your technique, mechanics, fundamentals work. That's hard. During the season, you might have a period, as Trey knows, you might have a short period for those kinds of things, but you can't really work on that in detail and depth during the season. So this is all off-season work. But I would start from scratch with Carson Wentz. And it's the reason why I agree with Adam when we started this, Jeff. When Adam spoke about someone coming in with a resume, with a presence, you need someone who comes in and who has done this. Not a young coach. Hey, I don't know Press Taylor personally at all. Maybe in 10 years, we'll be talking about Press Taylor as one of the great coaches in the league. I hope that's the case for his sake. But I think that when you can't bring in a 30-year-old coach without a resume to work with Carson Wentz. You need someone who, as soon as they walk in the door, immediately demands respect because of who he is and what he's done, and you have to start from scratch.
And Adam, I've heard you say before that you're on record. You do believe Carson can be rebuilt the right way. You do believe he still can be a franchise quarterback.
I do, but it has to be, first of all, he has to want to be again. He has to have that 1-2 to get back to where he was. They have to know what his mindset is when they meet. They have to talk with him. They need to sit him down after the season before he goes home for the winter, before they come back for OTAs. And plus, as Greg said, we don't know what the all season is going to look like due to the COVID issue. So we don't know when they're going to be able to get on the field with him. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the coach or coaches, particularly the coach. You can't have 3 or 4 guys working with him. You got to have one voice along with the head coach who calls the plays, assuming Doug's going to continue to call the plays. But you need that guy who comes in with a resume, knows exactly how you're going to rebuild him from the feet up and the mental part of it. Carson does not process like he used to. He was a pretty darn good processor at 16 or 17. Mm-hmm. I remember asking you, Greg, because his numbers were down in 18, but remember he had the back injury. I remember you coming on our show on Sirius XM. You said he was solid in 18. He wasn't the same as he was in 17.
Right.
You thought he was solid. Would you agree that the regression started in 19?
I don't think he had a great year in 19 by any means. I mean, it wasn't a bad year.
Yeah.
And obviously he was not working with a lot of weapons, but I think you started to see some of the issues really pop up last year in 19, and this year they just got worse and worse. You're right. A lot of it's mental. A lot of it's just not seeing things the way he should. And it's not because he's not smart. I've had people tell me, Josh McCown, who's been in the league 20 years, told me that he's the smartest quarterback he's ever been around. And he's been around a lot of quarterbacks. So again, we're not there. We're not in the building every day. I can't speak to the interaction with Carson and the coaching staff and what he takes in and what he doesn't. But it definitely, there's a mechanics and fundamentals and a footwork issue. And then there's the mental issue. And, it eventually all goes together. And Trey's point is a good one, because what starts to happen with quarterbacks, and Trey knows this, quarterbacks, when you don't have a good offensive line and the protection is not there, they start to anticipate and perceive pressure. And you cannot play quarterback in this league when you're anticipating and perceiving pressure.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to move on, get into the wide receivers a little bit as we continue to talk about not just only the matchup, but evaluating players as well. But we will pause one moment to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars and the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225. Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money.
All right. Thanks to our friends again at Sky Motor Cars, great partners that we've had here along the way. And Adam, I know you've got a lot of good things to say about our friends there at Sky Motor Cars.
Yeah, Brett Schulter. They're not just a high-end dealership. You might see a Dodge on there. You might see a Jeep from 1977. I'm looking at their inventory. Ooh. Sure, they've got a 2020 Mercedes-Benz E-Class car there, all shapes and sizes of cars. And you know what the best part about it is? They ship through the whole country. You don't have to live in Westchester or the Philadelphia or tri-state area here, Delaware Valley and all that. You could just order it online. Go to SkyMotorCars.com.
And if you do go in, make sure you tell them that Jeff and Adam sent you. All right, I want to talk about the wide receivers, guys, because it's been a kind of a hectic, crazy year for everyone involved. There's been a lot of criticism, especially lately, about first-round pick Jalen Reagor, and there's been some criticism of Howie Roseman for taking Reagor 21st overall. Now, Adam and I had Mike Quick on with us on Inside the Birds TV this past week to talk about the idea that Jalen Reagor does not get open, and he said that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. He said the guy has the speed, he has the skills, he has the ability. He just clearly obviously needs some more rhythm with the quarterback and a real offseason. We've talked about his body language. Maybe that needs to be worked with. But I'll start with you, Greg. I mean, you watch the tape. I noticed that in each game so far that Jalen Hurts has started, I believe he's missed Reagor deep in each of the three just by a little bit. There was the deep over against New Orleans. There was the post in the end zone against Dallas last week. So I feel like you can see him getting open. It's just clearly the rhythm isn't there with the quarterback. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and when your pass offense is totally erratic and inconsistent all season long, your receivers don't normally put up numbers, and that's what people look at. They look at numbers. Mm-hmm. I agree with Mike Quick. I don't think there's anything wrong with Jalen Reagor. I mean, he should have caught a touchdown last week on a ball that Hurts threw inaccurately, and Hurts actually mentally was correct on the play. He knew what he had. He held the post safety on the opposite hash, but he made an inaccurate throw that should have been a touchdown. Mm-hmm. And that was that bang 8 from the Cowboys 20-yard line. So, there's nothing wrong with Reagor. The numbers aren't there because the pass game has been so inconsistent, and there's been no stability to the pass game. But there's nothing wrong with Jalen Reagor. I agree with Mike Quick 100%.
Yeah, and something I've said, and Trey, I'm curious. There's so much hubbub over Justin Jefferson, and he looks like a great wide receiver, no doubt about it. And same with Brandon Ayuk. But don't you feel like if any of those other guys the Eagles drafted were put into the exact same offense, that you would see them struggling the same?
Yeah, especially when you're giving up all these hits and quarters. I mean, you're not giving the guy enough time to do what he needs to do. But I think that, some of the receivers, is regular guy. Hopefully, I'm not really sure. I do see at times where it just looks like, he doesn't finish the route, or like if there was one time where it's just like if he would have kept running, he would have been able to get the catch. So it just, to me at times, feels like, man, I just give me that little extra burst. But hey, I'm not an expert in wide receivers.
That's those little guys, right? It's not your,
little guys.
You don't
dabble
with
fast
little
guys that have hamstring issues.
What about his body language, just from a player to another? Because I know some people have felt that, and I've seen it too, that he seems to get frustrated within the game if he gets missed or the ball's not there. Does he have to deal with that a little better?
Sometimes, you'll see it sometimes where he slouches a little bit, but that's going to happen in the game. Everybody has that type of moment. But to me, it's just there are times when I see him at some of the end of his routes, like I would have wanted to see him finish a little bit better than what he did.
Yeah. Adam, there was a lot of talk about Jefferson and whether or not he could play the outside in the NFL. All I know is he's been able to win from the outside. So if there was a belief from any that he was not going to come to the NFL and win on the outside, clearly that might have been a misevaluation. Again, that's just talking about a different player.
And by the way, right, there are a lot of coaches I spoke with before the draft were not sure if he could win.
Right.
Body type, angular, he's a get stronger physically. Look, we have the results. He clearly can. He's been tremendous. This is one of the best rookie seasons we've seen in years. I mean, he's been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great kid, by a great story of how he was able to develop at LSU. But that ship has sailed now. So I know fans are still going to be pissed off about it. I get it. Mm-hmm. Look, we still hear about Brandon Graham and Earl Thomas. Although Brandon Graham has dispelled the issues with JPP, he's a better football player. But okay, that's fine. But you have what you have. Rager clearly is explosive. Let me give you another nugget. So earlier in the season, I was told that he had trouble getting off the line. His releases need to be better. Mm-hmm. His releases are really good, and he is getting open. I think we just talked about it, Jeff. The timing needs to be better between the quarterback and the wide receiver, but getting open is no longer an issue for him at all.
I feel bad for the kid because he clearly played last year with not a great quarterback at TCU, and that had an impact on not his draft status, but his season. And then he came in here, he got hurt in training camp, came back, played a few games in an offense that wasn't exactly functional, got hurt again, came back. The offense was actually more dysfunctional when he came back. And then a few weeks after coming back for the second time, then they had the quarterback change. So he's really, for the last 2 years, has not been able to have any kind of rhythm with any one individual.
Right, but what that impacts is his production, not his traits.
Correct.
And you're basically evaluating, when you evaluate a player coming out of college. Look, are there a lot of coaches that like production and scouts? There are. I've talked to many. Adam has too. There's kind of a schism in scouting between guys who look at traits and guys who look at production. And there's no right or wrong answer here, because you can probably go back in history and find out examples. Both have been great and both have been busts. But the point is, his traits are his traits. So, it's like Terry McLaurin, who they're playing tonight. Yeah. Terry McLaurin caught 35 balls in his last year at Ohio State. And a lot of people who look at traits thought, oh, okay, this guy didn't have big college production. Comes in the NFL and he becomes an X, a boundary X, and is a really good player. So you have to try to find that balance. So there's nothing wrong with Jalen Reagor. The numbers are a function of other things, but the traits are there.
Right. Okay, so a lot of if you guys are on social media, in which you are, you already know that Eagles fans are salivating over the idea of maybe getting Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith.
And that's fine. Great prospects.
But I want to ask that in the context of, because I agree with you, best player available, if that's the guy, fine. But Travis Fulgham, who looked like he was going to be you looked like you had a starting X and a starting Z in Fulgham and Reagor going forward. But Fulgham's clearly not had the end of the season that you saw in the middle of the year. So Trey, do you doubt now Travis Fulgham and what he can be in this offense, or are you mystified by his disappearance at all?
That is a little bit concerning, where the way he kind of just dropped off. There were some passes that he dropped that weren't there that usually he would have made, but wasn't usually. I mean, when he only had a very small sample size, but earlier in his playing time that he made. So there's something that he just needs to continue to work on. You're going to say, all right, bring in another weapon, but this team has so many holes. You can bring in whoever you want. If you don't take care of that offensive line and make sure that you can protect, it doesn't matter.
I'm sensing a theme with you.
It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. You can bring it. Yeah, it might help that it can get open. You can get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. But to me, it's like, man, you have so many issues on this team. All right, go get one of the receivers. You're still going to have some situations in your secondary. What are you doing in that area? So, I know you always want to get as many weapons as you can to put in on the offensive side of the ball, but I think that this team has a lot of holes.
Yeah,
but
Greg,
one other point too is, and I'm a big believer in this. I think if you have a stable, consistent pass game, and there are exceptions, so I don't want people to all of a sudden tweet me and say, well, in this game, blah, blah, of course there's exceptions to everything. Nothing's 100%. But if you have a stable, consistent pass game, you don't have receivers who dramatically are different in their targets week to week. And because you mentioned Fulgham. If you think Fulgham is your X, okay, and he had that, 4-game stretch or so where he, and he looked like a good player, okay?
Led the NFL in receiving during those 4 games, yeah.
So then all of a sudden after that, he goes from 8 or 9 or 10 targets or whatever the number of targets to 2 targets. That's a problem with your offense, not a problem with your receiver.
Right. Right. Adam, these kids, though, I would say also, and something Adam brought to light earlier in the season, I heard the same, he could have maybe had staying power with Detroit, right, Adam? But they felt like he needed to grow up a little bit. And
I'm not saying he's great, by the way. Don't get me wrong, Jeff. I'm not saying that. Well, I'm not saying he's Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams. But, why is he getting 10, 11, 12 targets? And then all of a sudden he's getting 2. Did he all of a sudden in 1 week change so much as a player that now he can't play anymore?
My understanding is a couple things here. We'll start with the Eagles and we'll get to what I was told from Lions. His practices were not good. Fulgham, and I don't know if it was because Jeffrey was coming back. He was still technically the starter when Jeffrey came back after a couple weeks, and he was not at all. Wasn't even getting the football. I think, Jeff, you and I have similar information. He just was not practicing well enough. There's a standard that you set for a guy. He's got to get to that standard. He was not playing to the standard. And as you saw, his role regressed. With the Lions, I was told that he just was not getting a great chance, and he got down on himself, and the coaches wanted him off the roster.
Yeah.
Look, as Greg said, but I don't look at it the same way Greg looks at it exactly. There's always a reason why players don't get on the field. It's either production or dropping the football, in this case at receiver, or practice. That's another thing. This is another thing I've learned over the years. If you don't do well in practice, you don't get on the field. Okay, here you are.
Right. But I think that you can marry the concepts. I think Greg is right to say that the offense itself was dysfunctional at that time. And then Alshon Jeffrey comes back. And I think the inability of Travis to then adapt to this and then start to get phased out of the offense, which was not functional, affected him. And it may have turned him from a guy who was very excited and at practice to go out and do great things to a guy who was not happy with and then let it get to him and then let it get to his practice habits. So both things can be true.
Both, yeah. And I'm not there for practice, so I can't speak to that. So maybe I could be wrong too, because maybe his practice habits. Adam follows this more than I do. By the way, I just saw a report by Chris Mortensen, who's usually not wrong on this. He's been doing this a long time. Who said that the relationship with the Eagles and Carson Wentz is totally fractured, and he will not be an Eagle next year.
Yep.
Wow.
That's what Chris Mortensen just reported. Wow. Now, again, I don't know who Chris talks to, but he's not talking to the janitor. So, I mean,
that's interesting.
Well,
yeah. Good luck with that contract. Well, that's something, Bob, we're going to cover later this week, next week.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting because they haven't even met yet with Doug.
He's going to be a healthy scratch tonight, by the way. He's not going to. Wentz is not suiting up tonight.
No, but I'm saying they've not even sat down yet with Carson and kind of gone over what.
But Adam, you know this, and you and I both know the agents. Yeah. I guarantee there's been conversations.
This is fascinating that they've decided this before even the season's over. This is
I don't know if the Eagles have decided this, but I think, yeah.
Let's go to what Trey said.
I don't know. Yeah.
I gotta hear exactly how Mort put it out there. I used to work with Mort, so he won't go anything unless he knows it's going to happen. This is fascinating.
Yeah, and this goes back to what Trey said. I mean, Trey, you kind of alluded to. You said the damage was done, and the toothpaste cannot go back in the tube after the benching. But I have to at least look at it from both sides here, Trey. I mean, it's not like Carson Wentz was playing so great, or it's not like he didn't deserve to be benched. So I don't. When the report is that he's done with the organization, doesn't trust it, or believes that the relationship is fractured, where is his role in this fractured relationship?
But okay, so yeah, all right, Carson got benched, but he's also looking at it as he's watching the film and he's seeing other guys on the field that are bench worthy that aren't being benched. You got a lot of guys up there that have done a lot that you can say, hey, you know what? That's worthy of being sat down for a little bit, but you let that slide. But I'm the one that's getting benched. And then once you make that decision and you make it for multiple games, oh, that's it. I'm done. That's it. There's no going back. It's too much. And you continue to let stuff slide. Hey, I got to go. There is no coming back from this. And for Carson, to me, I just feel like, you know what? I'm out. I've given everything that I've had to this team. I've given you all that I have. I mean, the man came back from the knee surgery or whatever, from his knee from 2017, rushed to get back, and was put out in how many games did he play? Because he had to end up getting a fractured back and still played through that. He's giving you everything that he can, and he still will always be looked at as we want the other guy over him. So for that reason, I'm out.
So he's the fall guy. He looks at himself as the fall guy for a problem that runs way deeper than just him.
Yeah, because the problem is way bigger than him.
And that's fair. And that's fair. But I think it's also
bigger than him.
It's not hard to notice, though, that the offense, while not great, certainly got a little bit of a boost when Jalen Hurts came in.
Oh, well,
I mean, they beat New Orleans.
Everybody loves the second guy.
Yeah.
You know, look at the energy. Look at the energy that happened. Everybody's game goes up a notch when the second guy comes in, when the backup quarterback comes in. Look at all the coaching that happens once the second guy comes off the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, as soon as Hurts touches off the field, everybody's arms are up. Hey, come here. Let me bring you in. Let's talk about this. Let's hug it up. Let's talk. Let's get all of this extra coaching going on. If I'm Carson, I'm sitting there looking at it like, where was all of this when I was coming off the field? The only person that met me was Sudfeld and Hurts over there with the Microsoft tablet, and then we go over there and talk about it. Where was all this coaching when I was out there on the field?
Yeah, right. And we'd say this, though. I don't think Doug was trying to sabotage Carson Wentz. I don't think Doug was trying to have a 4-win year. So if there's a disconnect and if there's something going on, I think that there's got to be some type of ownership on Carson as well.
Jeff, there's definitely this is not a secret. There's been friction between the head coach and Wentz. This has been going on virtually the entire season. But what we don't know is what were the issues? Did Carson not want them to have pre-snap motion? You know, what did he not like? What did he not agree with? And then from Peterson's standpoint, was Carson, in his view, being too stubborn? You know, I didn't see Mort's report. So if they're going to move him, see, this changes it in that if you're going to move him, and Jeff, you and I talked about this on our show with bringing Peterson back. Mm-hmm. This is two quarterbacks now. Sudfeld, and the big one is Wentz, that he has not been able to develop correctly, or to the extent they should have. Are we now going to trust Peterson with Jalen Hurts being the quarterback going forward?
I think it's a great question. I would say if Carson Wentz forces the issue here and says, I'm out and there's no way I'll ever play for an Eagle again, then Jeffrey has to seriously consider cleaning house of his coaching staff, maybe looking to the college ranks, whether it's a Graham Harrell or whether it's a Lincoln Riley or something, knowing that he's going to have a completely different quarterback, or maybe guys with a top 5, top 6 pick. He may have to look at
and Jeff,
quarterback class out there.
Yeah. You're basically saying if they're choosing the head coach over the quarterback, they're pointing the finger at the quarterback. That's what they're doing here.
I would say, yeah, that's fair.
We'll see. They've got until mid-March to move his contract because of the roster bonus.
Right. All right, be sure to check out our friends at Philadelphia Sports Nation for all of your latest Philadelphia sports news. That's PHL Sports Nation. They cover the Eagles, Flyers, Phillies, Sixers, and Union, and their goal is to enhance your Philadelphia sports fan experience there for the fan, by the fan. Check them out at phlsportsnation.com. Also, check them out on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. All right, it's time to do our Manscaped Man of the Game segment here. And
by the way, just before you do that, Nicole Roby Coleman is out today too.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's interesting. Just add them to the list of guys.
Is Bobby Taylor available?
Yeah.
is Joselio Hansen out there? Because I could slot corner right now.
We'd settle for Elvis Patterson.
there you
man. Wow.
Wow, that's a blast from the past. All right, I am going to start our Manscaped Man of this week segment with you, Adam. Who is your Manscaped Man of the game going to be?
To me, as soon as you sent me that text yesterday, I'm like, oh, it has to be Chase Young. We don't even know who's going to line up at left and right tackle at this point. We know Matt Pryor's going to have – Matt Pryor will be starting. It's just a matter of do they go with Wanago on the field or do they go with Toth. But fact of the matter is they're in trouble on the offensive line. Kind of feel bad for Jalen Hurts. This is not the way you want it to go against Washington in the last game of the season, your last chance to show the coaches what you can do. But the fact of the matter is Chase Young's on the other side. Look, quite frankly, you could pick any of these D-line, these former first-round picks, but Chase Young, it's going to be all night. The Eagles are going to have to block him, and it's going to be real hard.
Greg, his Manscaped Man of the game sounds kind of familiar to your Manscaped Man of the game.
Yeah, I kind of picked Chase Young as well because I was told that Trey Thomas is not playing left tackle today. So therefore, I went with Chase Young because I just figured that I've watched pretty much every Redskin game on tape. Every Washington football team game on tape, and Chase Young has just gotten better and better and better. Trey could probably speak to this as well. I think that he uses his hands much better. I think he plays off contact much better. And I think this is really going to be a difficult day for Matt Pryor, whoever's out there, whoever's ever, and he moves and he plays both sides, by the way. So, I think for Washington, Chase Young to me he's been dominant over the last month of the season.
Trey, what do you think Chase Young was thinking all throughout the week while he was watching tape on Matt Pryor and perhaps some Brett Toth tape?
Oh, I can't wait. I just can't wait.
I'm sure. I don't know why I picked an Eagle for my Manscaped Man of the game because the more information we found out, the worse it becomes for this team. But I picked Jalen Reagor. I just feel like in his last game of the year, he's really – I think the team is going to try to get the ball into his hands. We've seen – I think he had 7 targets last week. So clearly Jalen Hurts is starting to look for him more. They just got to get their timing together. And if that timing does come together a couple of times today, it could be a beautiful thing. So I'm going to have Jalen Reagor as my Manscaped Man of the game. Now, Trey, you're notorious for having a different outlook on our Manscaped Man of the game, or sometimes making a collective group like the offensive line. But when I saw your Manscaped Man of the game, I thought this is the most brilliant selection that anybody has had all year long.
Yes.
You picked the game clock, right?
Yes. Yes.
And therefore, the game clock operator, we could say, is the Manscaped Man of the game today, right?
I just want 0, 0, 0 is my Manscaped player of the game.
I love it.
Once this get this game over with, man. Just get it over with. And so the season is done. That's it. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Just get the game over. My Manscaped Man of the game is the play clock. 0, 0, 0.
A fast running clock, I've been told, can help save lives. So
yes.
Hopefully that will be the case. All right. You want to tell us about Manscaped for the final time this year on this show?
All right. So support for Inside the Birds is brought to you by Manscaped, who is best in men's below the belt waist grooming. Big news. Manscaped just released their new cologne scent to help you feel good and smell good all over and at all times. Who knew smelling this good could feel this good too? Everyone knows Manscaped has the perfect package 3.0 for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. But they didn't stop there. Complete your grooming game with their new refined cologne signature scent by Manscaped. With the same signature scent that's in all Manscaped formulas, this cologne is a perfect complement to the collection. Light, approachable, and gentlemanly in all the right ways. Think of it as your wingman for the night to keep you fresh and ready for anything. Calming and inviting, this signature scent introduces a light citrus burst before settling into the anchoring notes of vetiver and a woodsy masculine finish. This 50 millimeter spray cologne is even hypoallergenic, cruelty-free, dye-free, paraben-free, and 100% vegan. This beautifully designed glass bottle makes a statement and is the manly scent is attractive to set the mood. Also, be sure to check out the Perfect Package 3.0 with all the essentials for your below-the-waist grooming needs, including the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer and crop formulations. Yes, I'm talking about ball deodorant and toner to keep your sack smelling fresh. And now you can use the new Manscaped Refined Cologne to complete your set and smell great anytime, anywhere. It's time to feel sexy. We're bringing sexy back in 2021. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code TRAY, TRA at manscaped.com. Your balls and body will thank you.
Well, I certainly feel sexier. I hope you guys all do.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure, no problem. All right. I want to just throw a question at you guys from our audience before we move on to Trench Talk. And it's a good question because I think I understand the root of it. Theodore Nicholas asks, if we would draft a lockdown cornerback in the first round, and should the Eagles? And I think, the root of the question is like, well, duh, if there's a great cornerback, sure, draft him. But I think the question is asked, Greg, I'll start with you, because that's seemingly a dangerous position to evaluate in the first round over the last, I don't know how long it's been. It seems like there are equally many hits and misses at cornerback in the first round over the last 5 or 6 years. I haven't done all the stats, but
you could probably say that's true about a lot of positions, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think it comes.
I thought cornerback stood out more. I could be wrong. I thought the stats on corner were a little bit even.
It might
tougher.
be true. I can't speak to that right now.
It is actually true.
You have to evaluate the players in the draft, because the Eagles will draft where likely in the top what?
6. They're around 6.
Top 6.
Okay. So what you're going to have in the top 6 probably, or top 7, is you're going to have choices, positional choices. So now it comes down to how you evaluate positions and what kind of premium you place on specific positions. We don't know, if Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase, if one's there or both are there, is wide receiver viewed as a more premium position in your mind than corner? Because someone like Patrick Surtain, and I haven't studied these guys yet, so I'm only telling you what I see on TV and what I hear from people. Then you have to decide positional value and what you see, because the Eagles, as Trey said, they'll have a lot of needs. So there's a lot of potential players they could draft. So it comes down to not only how you put together a draft board, but what kind of premium you place on positions.
Sure.
You certainly don't want to draft a guy 6th who you have rated 18th, but there's nothing wrong with drafting a guy 6th who you have rated 9th if that positional value in your mind is stronger than another. So that's what it ultimately comes down to. And, because it's always easy to say, oh, you should have taken this guy. That's easy. Fans are going to do that no matter what. But you have to decide what kind of premium you place on specific positions.
Adam, we had a question from Carl Stevenson, our loyal fan, about when exactly the salary cap is announced officially, so that everybody knows.
Yeah, it won't be for a while. They'll start to get an idea in February, and then we usually find out within a week or so before free agency starts. Free agency starts tentatively on March 17th. Obviously this year's the big one, where they're going to have to figure out, is it going to be as low as 175 million? Jeff, as you know, that's the lowest it could go.
Right.
You need to have a ballpark, but then you have it. You'll hear some number from the NFLPA, and it's rarely going to be the number. They'll give you a ballpark of what it should be. Sometimes it's a couple million more, a couple million less. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to be as high as we would like. It's not going to be 198 million. Hopefully it won't be too much lower than that. But the Eagles are in the worst cap position of any team. Then you got the Wentz situation, which we're going to get into this week, about how that's going to impact their salary cap, whether they trade him or keep him. Obviously, keeping him is a lot better than trading him, but if they trade him, it's going to be painful. There are other things they could do to help alleviate it, but you can't get rid of the total pain. It's going to be hard to do it, but if that's what they have to feel like they want to do, then they'll do it.
Have you heard anything from around the league that would lead you to believe that the cap will not drop as badly as some feel it will?
It depends on TV, what kind of TV money they get. They could borrow from future caps. They're able to do that.
Right.
That could help alleviate it, but there's no way it's going to be 198 million or more. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Just,
I mean, yeah, as you're saying, the Eagles are already over the projected.
Well over, no matter what the number is. They're going to be well over. Then obviously if they trade Wentz, it's going to be painful. Even if they do it post June 1, it's still going to be painful to help alleviate it a little bit.
Right.
It's just going to be really, really painful. The dead money is going to be enormous. It's Going to be interesting offseason for the Eagles, that's for sure.
Sure, no doubt about it. All right, let's move on to Trench Talk, our final Trench Talk of our last pregame show of the year. Obviously, I want to start with the offensive line. We mentioned Lane Johnson, you hope comes back healthy. So right tackle is settled. Right guard should be settled with Brandon Brooks. The big question is Jason Kelce, because he's contemplated retirement each of the last few years. He's taken a beating again this year. And although he made the Pro Bowl, you know, I know, Trey, you've had some criticisms with some of his play and his decision-making this year. If your number one goal is to keep Carson Wentz protected and rebuild him, or even just to start ahead with Jalen Hurts and something new, do you think that Jason Kelce can come back and kind of redeem this kind of up and down year? I mean, do you think he is what he is at this point of his career?
I don't know. That's a tough one, just because of how much he means to this city, you know. And would I bring him back? I would take a really hard look at it. You know, I wouldn't just automatically say, yeah, absolutely, I'm bringing him back, because I mean, this was not a good year for Kelce at all. I know that he made the Pro Bowl, but this was not a good year. He missed a lot of calls. He sent the direction in some bad situations. He pointed to the wrong linebackers. Anytime the center makes a point, that breaks down the entire rule of the offensive line. And if he points to the wrong person, then now it throws everything off. And there were a lot of times where he missed a lot of points. And just going over these past two games, he had 7 false starts because he didn't snap the ball on time. Now, that is a problem. How can you fix that? You know, because, I mean, he's here. And my thing is with that, when you look at the coaching part of it, why wasn't that corrected?
Right. Is
Kelce above being corrected?
Is that an aging thing that you get older and your body isn't the same? So your snap and how you're snapping, are you trying to get a better jump? I'm curious how
he has to hear the rhythm of the cadence. You have to hear the rhythm of the cadence, and then you snap the ball. You know what I'm saying? So it's not an aging thing. It's like, are you into the game? Because if you're sitting there listening to the cadence and everybody moves and then you're still sitting there like, all right, and then snap the ball, that's a problem. There were twice in Arizona that he didn't even snap the ball. Everybody was moving. He still had the ball in his hands. Now, they'll call a false start on the other players, but it was because Kelce didn't snap the ball. And I'm pretty sure if I go through a lot of the rest of these games and really give a strong look at it, you will see it even when Carson was in there. Now, I didn't want to just break it down like that, but I'm sure there are more issues out there with Kelce not even snapping the ball and causing some of these false starts. And what made me look at it was because of the way Jalen Hurts answered the question after the game. You know, it seemed like he was trying to cover for someone. And I mean, man, if you're not snapping the ball, that is a problem. So, and my thing, when you look at the coaching part of it, why is he above being corrected? If you saw this was a problem in Arizona, that should have been nipped in the bud against Arizona. But then when you come back and you have 4 more in this particular game, and if it's a problem, then you say, if he can't hear it, take it out of his hands, take it out of the quarterback's hands, and go silent count. Put it on Kelce. But again, that just shows you that you can't hold everybody. You can't coach one player one way, but then on another player, you don't want to coach them that way. You got to hold everybody on the same accord. And to me, when issues like that happen, it's probably time to, like, all right, you know what? We got to make a decision here, you know, because if you can't correct them, what are you going to do?
You know,
because
Adam,
it's not going to happen next year. Next year, you're not going to all of a sudden be able to, you know, flex your chest and say, hey, I'm correcting this right now. That's not going to happen if you have the same coaching staff.
Right. And we talked about the cap, right? And how, you know, Jason Kelce is a guy who doesn't make a ton of money, but he is one of the higher paid centers in the league. And Adam, we know that Isaac Seumalo is a guy who signed a team-friendly contract a couple of years ago. They drafted him, projecting him as center. That they said that that would be his best position in the NFL. But, you know, we've also seen Nate Herbig, who's a backup center, play guard this year and hold his own. And, of course, Luke Juriga. So they have options if they want to make this difficult decision. It's just, do they say goodbye to Jason Kelce?
But the only one good option, the way I see it, would be to move Seumalo in there, because as you said, and you and I remember you and I talked about this 3 years ago. He definitely was drafted with the belief that he would replace Kelce. Then Kelce revived his career, so they moved him to guard. Look, the cap savings is $5.5 million.
Mhm.
That's got to. They got the bottom line is I don't see him coming back for a salary of $5.5 million. He turns 34 in November. Trey just talked about no matter what the Pro Bowl says, he didn't play up to the Pro Bowl level, so you can't justify paying him $5.5 million. And his cap number right now for 21 is $8.4 million. If they cut him, it's they'll save $5.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what's going to happen. They're either going to cut him
Mm-hmm.
or ask him to take a pay cut. I'd be shocked if he plays at it. And by the way, Jason could say, you know what? I'm not taking a pay cut. I'll play somewhere else.
Right. No, I
He wants to
agree.
play.
Yeah, I mean, he may do that, but I tend to think guys who don't want to take a pay cut and then don't find that same salary somewhere else, they just say, well, I'm just not going to play for that kind of money, and then I'll be done. So we'll have to see. It's, again, something he has pondered in the past, retirement.
But there are times when I watch Kelsey, and even in this past game, it just looked like it wasn't that same fire. And I know that a season can wear on you, man. But when you look at the week against the Rams, the way he played compared to this game, it just night and day. Against the Rams, you saw Kelsey flying around, popping up off the ground. It was just the way he walked back to the huddle, the way it was just a certain type of energy about his play. Now, in this particular game, it was just like, oh, man, I get pushed back. All right.
Yeah.
You getting zoned out when it's time for you to snap the ball. You're not making certain calls. It starts to wear on you.
Yeah, our follower here, our viewer, Theodore Nicholas, says he feels like Kelsey's kind of that old and battered warrior who's just going out on his shield, and that might actually be a decent description of it. Let's also talk about the left tackle position, because that's going to be a big storyline of the offseason. You've got Jordan Mailata, who will not play today because of the concussion. Andre Dillard should be back from the injury. There were questions about Andre Dillard even before he got hurt, whether he was going to be able to hold up and play that left tackle position, basically essentially replacing Jason Peters, because there was some question about his physical toughness to be able to play that spot. Trey, I know it's a very small sample size, but did you have concerns about Andre Dillard being able to hold that down before he got hurt?
Yeah, I was a little concerned with just the mental toughness that needs to happen out there at that position, to have the type of aggression that needs to be at that position. Now, there were times where when he came out there and he had a solid game. I mean, you go back and you look at that Chicago game, the way he played last year against Chicago, against Khalil Mack, he played with a lot of confidence. Mm-hmm. He used his hands a lot better. You know, he went back to playing the game. I think he did when he was in whatever school he went to. I don't know.
Washington.
Yeah, whatever. Some school out there in the middle of nowhere. Nobody, it's not like any of these big competitive schools out here that you see in SEC and all that, whatever, wherever he went. So, so it just seems like his game he was a little bit more comfortable against the Chicago game, but then you started seeing where his technique just went downhill, man. And, you go out there and you hear how he was getting dominated out there in training camp, and that could get frustrating when you going out there against some of these guys and they whooping you a little bit. Then next thing you get hurt, then that's it, So I don't know if he has that mindset that's needed to be out there to be the starting left tackle. But Jordan Mailata has definitely kind of, until then, I didn't know what to expect from Jordan. But I mean, the way he's played this season and he's gotten better throughout the season. So there are a lot of things that I still would correct with Jordan, but he has gotten a lot better.
All right. If you're enjoying today's show, the bright lights, the fancy graphics, and quality sound, it's all thanks to our team, Rebel Hill Productions. So reach out to Zach and Jim at Rebel Hill today for a free consultation to discuss your digital strategy and content needs. Their email address is info@rebelhillconsulting.com, or you can call them at 215-668-8498. That's Zach and Jim, Rebel Hill Consulting, info@rebelhillconsulting.com, 215-668-8498. Let's switch sides a little bit as we continue to talk about the trenches here. Pretty good year for the Eagles defensive line. They reshaped it. A lot of people forget that. They used to be kind of the team that rushed the passer with 3 defensive ends on the field, and then Fletcher Cox as the fourth pass rusher, but they reshaped their pass rush around more defensive tackles. So a lot of times you would see 2 DTs, 2 DNs, the traditional pass rush. It seemed to work well. Greg, I mean, when you looked at how they rushed the passer this year, I think in the middle of the year, we would talk about them being inconsistent at times as far as sacks and everything goes, but at the end of the year, they're up there with everybody, the leaders in sacks. So I guess you can't complain too much about how they did.
No, I thought they did a good job overall. I thought Josh Sweat continued to improve. He's now a good player. I guess he's a guy that's going to come up for a contract pretty soon here. I think Hargrave, as over the last month, has really shown why they paid him. As we've discussed, he was a pass rusher in college, and when he was with the Steelers, he wasn't quite used in that role, but you saw flashes. But now with the Eagles, particularly over the last month when he got healthy, you've seen him show the pass rush ability that I think the Eagles saw when they studied the tape. So, this has become a pretty good pass rush unit. And my guess is, without having the numbers in front of me, that the large majority of their sacks came from their D-line, not from any linebackers or DBs. It came from the
Correct.
D-line.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
How difficult, if they bring in a new defensive coordinator who wants to be not as much Jim Schwartz like, but maybe multiple front like, do they have it doesn't seem like they have personnel that's really suited toward multiplicity or lining guys up in different positions and having them rush from.
Standing up. You mean like Barnett standing up and
their pass rushers all seem to fit a similar mold.
Yeah. The question, Jeff, and we talked about this in the first hour, as I understood it, they're open to changing schemes. They're not married to the wide nine. But this was the argument, Jeff, you and I had about Schwartz. Our belief was like, look, Jim Schwartz is a good sound defensive coordinator, but he doesn't believe in specialists. You don't see a lot of pre-snap disguise. This is something we heard for 2 years from teams we spoke with. And the hope is that whoever calls the defense, even if it's Matt Burke and they stay with him, let's see some disguise. Let's see something different. Yeah, sure. Their D-line was great the talent level is great there. That's the thing. The front office did a great job of building this defensive line. But I'm just telling you, we've heard this now for 2 years. Very little pre-snap disguise. That's, by the way, that's a big reason why I don't get turnovers. That has nothing to do with man coverage. That's an excuse. Everyone I've asked the same question. Can they get turnovers with this defense? They said, absolutely. But you got to make the quarterback think out there, and they don't make quarterback think with this defense.
Is the next coordinator going to have some challenges with this personnel and in being able to transform? I mean, he'll have one draft and not very much free agency dollars to be able to.
Right. And plus, depending on what front you use, because the one thing the Eagles want to do is they want to make sure their key players, that they're used correctly. That's one thing that's certainly going to be a requirement.
Right.
Well, they can't go to a 3-4 front, but because this defense is not set up for that.
No,
because that means that you're going to have to, first of all, you're going to have a nasty nose guard. And then I don't know if these guys can stand up and rush at outside linebacker position. So I don't see this being a front that switches to a 3-4.
No,
I think Graham is a guy you could not in a 3-4 necessarily, but I think Graham is a guy you could use as a joker in different fronts. But I'm not sure that there's other guys. Could Josh Sweat? Maybe. But we'll see. I mean, look, a lot of teams do this with guys that you wouldn't necessarily think could do it. And the whole point of it sometimes is just to give different looks. Because as Trey knows, when you start standing up, then you do put a mental burden on the offensive line as to which five are the offensive line responsible for. Is it going to be a man protection or more of a slide zone type protection? You do put a mental burden on the offensive line. The Eagles don't necessarily, even though they have good players and we're obviously among the league leaders in sacks, they don't put a mental burden with their front alignment in their sub nickel or sub dime. They don't put a mental burden on the offensive line. They win because they're talented.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the one thing too is that because you can rush, but can they drop back in coverage?
Right.
Because that's the problem. Because if I know you rushing, then all right, we're gonna go to it. But if he can drop back and try to cover somebody out of the flats, that's where you're probably gonna find some of those problems.
Yeah, I would think that. I wanted to talk about Barnett too, because I feel like it's too bad he got hurt the last few games here. I feel like Derek Barnett was having a pretty decent year. Now I don't know what the number, Adam, you can tell me. It would have been on fifth year for him. I don't think he was going to see that exact dollar figure.
Yeah,
but
so what it is. Right. So he's 21 is his fifth year option.
Right.
His base salary of just over 10 million, fully guaranteed. It becomes fully guaranteed on the first day of free agency. So tentatively right now, free agency starts on March 17th. It could change. So there's no way he plays with that number, particularly because of the cap situation.
Right. He's
done a good enough job. I'd love to get Greg and Trey's opinions on this kid. He's certainly improved. Yes, he's had some minor injury issues, but you've definitely seen him get better. He had some really good games this season. So at least he's improving. He's a pretty young guy, by the way. He was 20 when they drafted him. you'd like to see more out of him, but he's not a $10 million a year player. So you extend him, you lower his cap number, his cap burden, but there's no way you want to trade him. This guy's too talented to cut him, but I don't see any way that he play at 10.051 million in 21.
No. What kind of year do you think he's had? Craig, I'll ask you because I feel like
I think he's shown flashes and splashes,
right.
But I think given where you drafted him and what you were hoping for, because I believe he was the 14th pick in the draft, I think you were expecting him to be a dominant edge player. When edge players are drafted 14th, the hope is they become dominant pass rushers. You don't draft an edge player at 14 to set the edge and be a great run player. It's nice if they can do that as well, but you're drafting them to rush the quarterback. And while he's shown flashes, I agree with Adam. I don't think he's played consistently. He's been hurt a lot. You know, it's that availability issue. He hasn't been on the field enough. He hasn't been the kind of edge pass rusher on a week-to-week basis that I believe the Eagles were hoping for when they drafted him at 14. The tape tells you that. He shows flashes, but he's not that guy on a consistent basis.
It's almost as if the Eagles have a few too many situational pass rushers and they don't have a real dominant dual. Brandon Graham's a dual threat pass rusher, but he doesn't get you more than 7 to 9 sacks a year. For a team that has a lot of sacks, what they really lack is that Myles Garrett or that really fierce, guaranteed double-digit sack from the edges type of guy, and they really haven't had that in quite a while.
No, you haven't. And and I don't know what the problem is that first of all, you need to have a secondary for me. You need to have a secondary that's going to be able to give that quarterback, to make that quarterback hold the ball just a tick, so to give those guys time to get there. For me, I feel like secondary dictates sacks. Now, of course, some people will be like, wait, well, the defensive line makes it. But for me, the secondary, you got to have coverage for that, to make the quarterback hold the ball, to give that defensive front time to get there. Because you don't have anyone on this team that's just going to straight up go and whoop a man that quick. You see guys, usually most of their sacks are coming in around that 2.5 second range. So that's usually where protection breaks down naturally anyway. So we'll see, but to me, I think that Barnett just needs to continue to develop on some of his rushes. I mean, with 5.5 sacks, all right, you saw him go out there and I mean, just manhandled Trent Williams against, that one particular rush. But other than that, you really didn't see any creativity in his rush. And I don't know if you plan your rushes based off of how the offensive line is going to set. Because to me, when you have to rush, every rush can't be the same on everybody. You have to kind of change up the way you want to attack based off of how that offensive lineman is going to set. And to me, they feel like, hey, this is my move and I'm going to use it against everybody. And that's not going to work.
Well, you wonder if a new defensive coordinator who does maybe come in and do some things differently figures out a way to tap into certain players and accentuate their strengths. I mean, I don't know if Derek Barnett will just ever be a 12, 13, 14, 15 or more sack type of guy. But correct. I wonder this with everything. I always wonder if a different voice or a different idea or a different concept and scheme brings something out of a player that you just haven't yet seen.
Yeah. Like even when you see him rush, though, like I rarely saw him give a spin move. I rarely saw him do anything that made me feel like, okay, you're going to scare an offensive tackle. It just, it was always, all right, I'm going to give you edge. Then here comes the bull. Maybe a spin move, and then if he did do a spin move, it was when if they were sliding to him. So I don't think sometimes his defensive front understood slide protection and how to attack an offensive line. So that's just how I see it.
Well, there will be probably 2 or 3, as there usually are, pass rushers there in the top 10 of the draft. I don't think it's a position that the Eagles will not look at. It's clearly a position that they've always prioritized. I know there's a kid from Miami who's supposed to be pretty good, so obviously that's something that we'll get into the offseason when we look at pass rushers. But Adam, you said this, and I agree. I mean, people keep waiting for Brandon Graham. They think he's, going to be irrelevant a year later, but he's consistently himself every year. It's hard to see him not coming back next year, even with all the difficult decisions the team has to make financially.
Yeah, I mean, you and I could take 5 or 6 players and say, you know what, these veterans are not going to be on the team, age, salary cap, they're just not going to be back. There's a saying in scouting, you're either part of the solution or part of the problem. He's part of the solution. There's no question. This guy's exactly what you want. He'll go in the Eagles Hall of Fame someday. It's been a great draft pick. It certainly didn't start out that way his first 2 seasons, but he he matured, he got better, and he's the kind of guy you want around. He's been a great Eagle. But look, there's some tough decisions here. There are a lot of them because of the salary cap. Then we got the Wentz situation, which is going to complicate the matter. The Eagles, for the first time in Howie Roseman's career, they actually have a real cap issue, which is going to be very, very difficult. There are going to be some painful decisions. There are going to probably some players where you go, wow, I didn't think they'd cut him, or maybe they'll be able to move some of these players. But the fact of the matter is they're going to have to say goodbye to some really good players.
Yeah.
Sure. And finishing off trench talk, I mean, I think we can safely assume Jason Peters will not be back next year. We've already, well, I think
don't count him out. He might say he can play center. Who knows?
That's why I said I think.
Don't count him out.
Barring anything unforeseen. Yes.
So Jason Peters probably not back. We'll see on Jason Kelsey. We do think Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks will be back there at right guard, right tackle. No reason not to think so. We'll see what happens with Sayamalu. And then, of course, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. I mean, I can't imagine that he's one of those difficult decisions where he's not back, because there's still a pretty decent amount of money going to him next year, I believe.
Yeah, they've restructured. They can't walk away from him. No, just to follow up on something we'll see about Kelsey. Sayamalu is definitely back. Yeah.
Sayamalu is definitely back.
Cox they can't get rid of. It just can't. The dead money is too much. Remember, he's been one of those restructures. The dead money's way too high. We know Hargrave is going to be there. Malik Jackson, I'd be shocked if he's back. Not that he hasn't been good. He's been solid, but he's another 30-year-old player who they're probably going to have to walk away from.
Yeah.
You probably put him on the list of guys who probably have to move on. Other than that, they don't have a lot of players left. I mean, they're not a ton of guys you could say, okay, they're going to walk away from them. But I like your point, Jeff. You made it to us a couple times. I think Josh Sweat's a guy you look at. You don't have to do it now, but once you clear the cap issues, you start looking. He's a guy you need to extend. Another guy, it's a tough one. We haven't talked about Avonte Maddox. We thought all along he played out of position. He's more of a slot corner. He's eligible. Also, he's from the 18 draft.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready for the extension there yet. I don't mind.
Yeah, what would you do there?
I don't mind making him, because, what's the best he's going to do? It's not going to be superstar in the league. So I don't mind letting him get closer to free agency, showing me his fourth year that he can be a part of the team and excel in the slot. Because if he doesn't play well in the slot in year 4, then you don't even want to be attached to him going forward. So you got to wait that one out.
Sure.
So here's my question with all of this, because I know that we're talking about all these guys that's going to be here and not going to be here. What are you going to do in this locker room to kind of bring the leadership that this group needs? Because right now you can bring in whoever you want that's going to be this pass rusher and all this other stuff. If you don't have anybody in that locker room to pull these guys together and have the right mindset to go and take the field, we're going to see ourselves again with the same problem. You don't have the Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Loans in that locker room. Who are going to be the leaders on this team to make sure that we don't have another drought like we just went through?
Well, it's a good question, Trey, because, one of your leaders is Rodney McLeod, and he's out with an ACL, and you have no idea when he's going to be able to come back to the team there.
He would be another one.
He's over 30 as well.
Yep. Yeah. That's a tough look. You love Rodney. It's been a great story. Great.
He had a great year too until he got hurt. He was one of the better defenders this year.
Well, Jeff, I mean, there's another guy that has got a cap number over $5 million.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back with him? I mean, he's coming back from an ACL injury. He's another player. He turns 31 in June. I mean, it's tough. It's painful. You like to have him around, but you're in a cap position where you just can't have everyone back. This is a tough. It's going to be a tough year for the Eagles.
It's going to be an amazing offseason. It really is, because as Trey's pointing out, you got to get younger. There's no doubt about it. They need to get younger, but they also can't get so young that they have no leaders in the locker room. I think Trey
You still need somebody that can bring that room together, and this team doesn't have it. No. They don't have one. And I don't know if you're going to emerge one. Who, even with Rodney McLeod being there, he never was that guy to kind of bring everybody together on both sides of the ball.
Right.
For us, it was like a B-Dog and Trotton, all them, or us and McFly. You had enough guys in that locker room. For this team here, who is that guy?
Trey, that's going to be the one of the many questions of the offseason that's going to have to be answered. All right, we got to move on and finish up our thoughts on this game in particular. And I'll give you my thoughts on DraftKings, our friends. If playoffs time, you want to talk about playoffs? That's right, playoff football. playoffs will start very soon, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. If you haven't checked out the app yet, there's no better time to sign up and start cashing in. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new players a deposit bonus up to $1,000 when they sign up using promo code ITB. DraftKings Sportsbook has endless ways for you to bet, from live betting to betting on your favorite players. They do it all. So check out the DraftKings Sportsbook app every day this week to cash in on their daily odds boosts. New odds boosts are posted every single day for all the biggest sporting events. DraftKings is safe, reliable, and secure, making it easy for you to deposit your money at your convenience and withdraw your money at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code ITB when you sign up to get up to $1,000. That's code ITB to get a deposit bonus up to $1,000 for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Got to be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, fellas. According to my friends at DraftKings, the Eagles, this line has moved so much. The Eagles at one point, I think earlier in the week, were favored. Then they were 1 or 2 point underdogs. They are now down to 5.5 point underdogs at home against the Washington football team, with an over-under very low, probably the lowest of the week, second lowest of the week, I think, at 42.5. So I will start it off with my good friend Greg Cosell. Who's going to win this game? What's the score?
Well, I know I picked the Washington football team, and I can't remember the score, Jeff. And I guess maybe with the weather, the score will be lower. But I did pick Washington. I will say this, though. I think that you'll see Jalen Hurts make some plays with his legs in this game, because I think he'll have to move around quite a bit. And I think he will make some plays with his legs. But I do believe Washington will win the game.
All right, Washington wins in Greg's opinion. Trey, who's going to win the game?
Oh man, I you know what? I hope it's hard. It's hard for me to even say that as a player. It just hurts. It hurts. I hope that Washington wins this game, though, just because we need the high draft pick, and we can stick it to Dallas one last time to just say, all right, you know what, Washington, go ahead, win the game, and we're done. Dallas, you don't go to the playoffs. Stick it to Dallas. We lose this one. Let's see. I'm going to go 2013.
All right. I think the fans will be okay with you saying that, under the presumption that, you're right. You're holding Dallas out and you're getting a higher draft pick. It's for the good. It's for the good of the franchise.
It's for the good of the team. It hurts to say it, but,
All right. Don't let Trey be mistaken here. Don't get it twisted. He's not rooting against the Eagles. He's just rooting for a better situation for the Eagles.
And to stick it to Dallas mostly.
There you go. I think that everybody can rally around that. Adam, who's winning this game?
I got it. Washington 23, Eagles 13. Low scoring game, as we all expected. With all these players out with the Eagles, it's just going to be hard for them. They'll be able to look at some younger players, but this is not the week to do it against Washington's great front. This could get ugly. I like Greg's point about using some misdirection. Get those talented defensive linemen for Washington go the wrong way. You hope it works. You got to try something to help Jalen Hurts out. This one could get ugly, folks, on Sunday night.
Yeah, I have a feeling the same, Adam. I picked a closer game, kind of close game, 24-14 Washington, but there is an ugliness factor here that this thing could get out of hand in the second half, especially if the Eagles make some more personnel changes just to try to get the clock to run down. And as Trey said, 0-0-0 will be everybody's best friend when that clock operator runs down. So, By the way, myself and Trey entered this last week in the lead. We were both 8-7. Adam and Greg were 7-8. So since we all picked the same team, it looks like we're going to finish tied for the win.
All right.
Somehow I'm not bothered by that, though, Jeff.
Yeah, you don't seem the slightest bit disturbed, right? All right. A big thanks to our friends from DraftKings, Manscaped, Rebel Hill, Sky Motor Cars. And I just want to take a minute on behalf of Adam and myself to both thank you both, Trey and Greg. You've been an awesome partners to work with on this inaugural pregame live show. It's been great. I hope we can do it again next year. I want to thank all the people who've watched and given us feedback. It's been great. We really appreciate the comments. People who've asked us questions. People have said this is the best pregame show they've seen. So we really are thankful for everybody, all your support. Keep following for more information on Inside the Birds on our Twitter account @InsideBirds. We'll let you know more this offseason about what we can do next year. We all hope to be back in the same capacity. So for one last time, for Greg Cassell, Trey Thomas, and Adam Kaplan, I'm Jeff Mosher. Everybody enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you soon.